Hi, welcome back to the farm. My name is Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. I really don't have a lot to talk about farm-wise this week. It's been a very slow week because it started off with me getting my booster. So there were a couple of days where I did not feel like doing a thing. I felt really horrible. Really sore arm, nauseated, aches, a cough. Yeah, wasn't in a good way for a couple of days. So it sort of put everything back a few days and meant that there was not a lot of outdoor activity this week. I even still have the bruise on my arm. Yeah, I don't think that should have happened that way. I think there might have been a bit of a movement when the injection happened, but the arm's not sore anymore. But yeah, it did take quite a few days until I felt normal. I am feeling a bit in holiday mode at the moment. The days being so warm and sort of stretching into the evenings has just put me in a bit of a slow pace at the moment. It's funny because when I worked in a corporate environment, this was my busiest time of the year, and I would never have even considered being on holidays. So maybe that's what it is. It's kind of that whole reverse, and I'm really enjoying the fact that I don't have to do anything right now. The sheep are doing really well. I just popped in and saw them before I came in here to record, and they can probably hear me through the window, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few bars that appear in the sound. I do feel bad on the really hot days that I haven't been spending more time with them. During spring, when it was cooler and the sun wasn't quite as potent as it is right now, I would sit outside with them for quite a while and really just enjoy being out there, like take my knitting or a book or watch a podcast or something like that, just to spend some time. But that hasn't been happening on these really hot days. There's no way I'm sitting out there in the blaring sun for hours. It's just not good for the skin and yeah, just way too hot. So what I have been doing is each evening I've been coming over probably around 8:15. So once the sun's actually started to go down already, it's then not anywhere near as hot, and it's actually really pleasant and a really lovely time to be outside. So I have been watching the sunsets. I have been watering all the plants here around the shed, especially the ones in where the sheep are, to try and get them to really grow quickly. I know they can only grow as fast as they can grow, but I really would like to make sure that they get established. I've been refilling their water in the evening as well. And then just sitting and being quiet and enjoying just spending some time outside when it's more pleasant, but also spending time with them. You know, they come and go past me, they'll come up for a scratch and then they'll go and eat. And it's just nice to just sort of be in that space. I've also been watering the veggie box that we planted. They're doing okay. All of the coriander has died. I don't know if it was eaten or if it was just too hot for it, but everything else seems to be doing okay. Just got to keep the water up to it for a little bit just to make sure that it starts to grow. The other box still isn't ready for planting yet. We just need to turn it over a few more times and get that manure and compost really going well so that it is at the right stage for planting. So for the few days after my booster, I didn't even feel like knitting or crocheting. So I've sort of missed a few days this week of really doing anything. But despite that, I actually have quite a bit of craft that I can show you. So I've continued to work on my kite flying socks. I'm on the second one and I've turned the heel and I'm about halfway through the leg. So that's going along nicely. I decided to start another crochet blanket. This time I am doing Tunisian crochet. It's the first time I've done that. Here's what I've done so far. It doesn't really look like a blanket, more like just a long strip at the moment. But I am enjoying this. This is based on the Pilsen blanket. It's literally just, I think it's called single Tunisian crochet. So it's fairly simple. And I think that's a good thing to start with, something that you've never done before, a different craft. The idea will be that I am just going to grab all of my fingering weight scraps and pop them in, doing like a variegated and then a solid, variegated, solid. Do a really long strip that is as wide as I want it to be, and then start a second strip next to this one and sort of alternate the colors. So then have solid here, and it might end up being a solid, a variegated, a solid, but so that none of the lines overlap. So it becomes quite patchworky and just includes every single little bit of scrap yarn that I have once I've finished using them in a project. The first few rows I probably could have done a little bit more, but now I've kind of figured out the amount that I need for a pass. So I'm going to have shorter ends as I go along. So I really will be using basically every single little bit of the things that I have left. I've got some quite small balls and I've got some quite large balls. The larger ones I might end up breaking in two and do a small section now and then hold it off until much later in the project and bring it back in. And the small ones, like this little bit here, it was just good to pop it in and use up something that had been sitting in my stash. I sort of don't like to throw away any of my yarn, so I keep it all. But when it comes to this will like use it all and be a lovely blanket one day. It will be a very long-term project, and it might be something that I work on for a little while, and then it gets put aside, and then when I feel like it, I'll pick it up again. So this will sort of, I think if I start to really enjoy it, and when I put the second one on, it looks good, this will be a project that will probably be around for quite a long time. What I've done is I've got this big bag, and in it I have split a bag of colours that are solid and then variegated colours. And I'm sort of doing a bit of a lucky dip. So I kind of go in and randomly pull something out and then see if it's not too clashy, and also check the length of how much it is. I kind of don't want to do all big long pieces all at once, and I don't want to do all short pieces all at once. Kind of want it to look random but not be entirely random. So it's sort of a little bit of random with a little bit of thought once I've sort of pulled the thing out. So far I've pretty much stuck with the complete random, but I think as it starts to build and as I go into other strips and I want to see where all of the lines are, I will be sort of playing around with my choices a little bit. So I have the balls that I used on my last granny stripe blanket, as well as a whole lot that I used on my first granny stripe blanket. And I'll just continue to add to this as I work on other fingering weight projects. So there should always be scraps that I can use, and just a little project that I can just pick up and put down in between other projects. I also popped another dishcloth onto the needles this week. I'm up to the decreases in my corner to corner, grandmother's favourite. So I noticed as I was making my coffee the other day that all of our cloths for the coffee machine are getting quite worn, got some holes, so they need to go in the rubbish. And I've still got this big ball of the, I think it's called cappuccino colour that we're using for the coffee machine cloths. So I will get another couple of these done. These are really good for just sitting in front of the TV. Get a few done so that we have nice, fresh, clean cloths for the coffee. And I also cast on a new shawl. Yeah, I did do a lot this week. I'm really quite surprised once I sort of got it all out. I've cast on the Mrs. Tumnus shawl. which is inspired by Mr. Tumnus from the Chronicles of Narnia, which I loved reading, and I have a box set of the books that I really love. So this pattern I have had in my queue for a really long time, and I've just never got to it. It's something I've always wanted to work on, and for some reason I've just never done it. So I've chosen this purple. It's sort of a semi-solid. It's got some light and darks, a little bit of pink and some speckles in it. It's by a dye that's no longer dyeing, so I won't link it or give you any information because there's really no point. So there's no way you'll probably be able to get one of these. So yeah, I think this will be a lovely color. I know it's not the red that is in the story or in the pattern, but there is no way that I would be able to wear a red. So I think purple is much more my color. I have literally only done 2 rows and the cast on. It was a 400-ish row cast on, so that took quite a while on its own. And then the first row after that was a lace row. So doing knit 2 togethers into a cast on edge was a challenge, but there it is there. So it's got, I think, about 32 rows of lace, and then there's a garter section that is short rows, which sort of brings it into a crescent shape at the end. So I'm hoping that it will turn out really beautifully. This is a BFL yarn, which I've never worked with before, but I think it will make a nice shawl. It's quite a thick fingering weight, but for a smallish shawl, I think that will work out quite well. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.